Welcome to Season 4 of the Lehigh Valley Arts Podcast, where we explore the local arts culture and community in the Lehigh Valley.
We'll be doing this through conversations with individual artists, administrators, musicians, poets, actors, and arts and cultural organizations. We'll discuss all types of mediums with the goal of enriching local arts culture.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Lehigh Valley Arts Podcast. I'm Ben, and this week I am joined by Damian Appiotti. Damian Appiotti is a multifaceted musician and educator who has been playing the guitar for about as long as he can remember. He grew up with parents who both have musical backgrounds and has had a life surrounded by music, film, and art at large. The style that Damian often works in is referred to as prog, which some have gone on to describe by saying it's not so much a genre as it is people making music on the guitar and making unique and interesting compositions. His experiences to date have culminated in his first EP, Automaton, and since its release, he has been hard at work on his next project, which is expected to release in the coming months.
Damian, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me, Ben.
I'm excited to have you here.
I am excited to be here.
We've been talking about this for quite a while.
I think 2 years.
Yes,
I think
that sounds about right.
After we saw Nope, I think was the first time.
Yeah. And you've got some stuff coming out soon.
I do. I have some stuff I'm very, very, very excited about.
Awesome.
To be coming out in the next couple months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited to dive into that. I want to dive into that.
Okay.
But before that, let's let people know who you are. So, Damian, who are you and what do you do?
I am a guitarist, first and foremost. I'm a bit of a guitar nerd. I am an educator. I like to teach guitar, usually diving into the spots that I couldn't really figure out early on. And on top of that, I play gigs, and recently I delved into recording music and writing and composing over the past couple years, and that has been a fun ride to figure out.
What does playing live look like for you? Do you do it?
Occasionally. Within the realm of music that I create, playing live is not something usually thought of. I know individuals who have really successful careers, successful music releases under their belts, who have maybe played live once or twice.
Wow.
Or never played live. I have a friend of mine who just played his first live show a while ago, and he released music. He's been releasing music for about 2 years now.
Wow.
So that's very interesting.
Yeah.
I think it's because the landscape of music has changed so much, like with social media.
Totally.
There's a very, very, very famous artist in, I want to say Serbia or Croatia, named David Maximičić, who has tens of thousands of followers on Instagram, and he has just announced, I'm not touring for the next 5 years or so.
Wow.
I think he's only said he's toured once or twice too. So
Oh my gosh.
it's just the music scene in this particular realm has changed so much.
Yeah.
And it's kind of hard to keep up with. It seems like every day I open Instagram and there's a new fad that's going around, and people are trying to get under their belts, and it's difficult, but it's fun.
Yeah.
And it's not really something that I try to keep a hold on too much, because I feel like I'll lose my mind if I.
Understandable. Yeah. When did you start playing guitar?
It would be actually 10 years ago this summer.
Nice.
Yeah, so I was 13. I got a guitar when I was 11, and into perfect, elementary school, middle schooler fashion, I just didn't play it. It sat in the case for so many years, and then it wasn't until I was in middle school that I wanted to pick up music again in some way. And I come from a very musical family. Both my parents have degrees in music.
Yeah.
And my dad is a music educator as well. And so I was like, okay, cool. I have so many instruments around me, and I've played so many instruments through my life, trumpet, French horn, and piano. I tried my hand at violin. It did not work out that well. And we always had a drum set, saxophone, and stuff in our home. So, but anyway, when I was 13, I was like, I really want to pick up music again, see what I can do with it.
Yeah.
And I've always loved art in different forms. So it was like, this is a new way to express myself as an angsty young teenager. And my mom had an acoustic. So classical actually was an Ovation, and I started playing around with it. She taught me a few chords, and it was an addiction from that point on. And I was later the next winter when I was 14, I got my first electric guitar.
Wow.
And I started playing immediately in a band. And I didn't know anything, but I had so many people around me that kind of just pushed me to like learn how to play songs and
Sure.
and to create music there.
That's cool. Is that band still around today?
No, that band is long gone. I have been in a number of bands over the years, none of which have stuck around that much. I've done my fair share of playing with music with other people, and it's the band politics and stuff is just not something I'm super into doing right now.
Understandable.
But in the past, yes, I've played with a few, and they're always fun. Fun for a while, and then you gotta like step back.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. You have one EP and a handful of singles out right now. So tell me more about that first EP.
Oh man, so that's Automaton. That was a labor of love and figuring things out. Let me preface, I like the cold, I like the winter months, and that has always been like the time where I find myself to be creative in whatever I do. Whether it's writing, like using literature or like reading or something that I love, just the colder months. And so I went to Alaska January of 2022. And while I was up there, I brought just a laptop, an interface, and a speaker with some headphones. And I had a handful of plugins, and I really didn't know what I was doing. But I started putting, notes into a software and creating music. And some of the stuff that came out of that, actually a lot of the stuff that came out of that whole endeavor ended up on the EP. Pretty much everything from Scars, which is one of the songs, came from Alaska, Electric Sheep, another song. And then the seeds that kind of planted the next two songs kind of arose from that. And when I got back home, I really just sat down and got to work on them.
Very cool. What is it about the winter months that is so inspiring to you?
It's just always been a time where I felt like compelled to do something. Like in the summer, I'm content to just sit on the couch or sit in the pool and just rot all day and do nothing. I think it's so relaxing. But the winter and fall, it's like go time. Like I guess it's used to like, school picking up, and I was homeschooled, and my parents were very reliant on like self. So like you had to, here's your homework, you do the work, you do this. And so I guess it's always kind of been like go time for me. Like as soon as fall hits, here's all the stuff I have to get done. Let me get started. And I'm trying to get it done as fast as I can, as much as possible. Yeah. And so I think when it comes to creating, like in the summer, I just don't create. In the spring, I'm just kind of lazy. I'm like, I don't feel inspired at all. Like nothing's really doing it. But as soon as like it drops below like 70 degrees, I'm ready to go. I'm like, all right, it's go time. I got to start writing. I got to start putting stuff down. Yeah. Yeah.
I know storytelling is something that's really important to you.
Yes.
And so there's a bunch of different views on music as it relates to storytelling.
Yeah.
And there are some that just decide to put out sonic landscapes, some that want to tell a full story, some that tell stories through lyrics, etc. Now, most of your stuff is instrumental, correct?
Yes.
Or if not all of it.
All of it is instrumental, yes.
So I want to hear about that storytelling aspect while keeping in mind that instrumental base to everything.
Sure. I am inspired a lot, not only in the winter months by the landscape itself, but by the sort of art it inspires. So like physical media, like, different books, and to movies and pictures and little YouTube videos just about like fall and winter. And I've always had this like feeling about that time of the year that I felt like I couldn't portray or like convey to other people. And music is kind of like a way to do that. And certain films, like I think I've mentioned, like there's a great film called Local Hero that I watch every fall, or Song of the Sea is another one. It's a great film. And so I kind of try to put the feelings I get from these movies and to tell the story of like how these arcs make me feel and everything into my music. And so when it comes to storytelling with music, I don't write lyrics, so I have to use tools like orchestral plugins, or maybe I'll add a little bit more of a little more gain to the guitar here to like add a little bit, bring up the cleans here, and something I can do to really stretch out this feeling, this emotion that I'm trying to portray. Lyrics are definitely or not. I'm not a skilled lyricist. I can't say like, oh, this thing made me sad, So therefore, I'm writing this lyric that is sad. I have to say, like, this thing made me sad. What musically can I convey here to let you know that this particular moment of the song, I am sad?
Yeah.
Or in the case of the song Hammerhead, like, it's just that song is a explosion of jubilation on my part. I was so happy when I recorded it and wrote it, and it's probably my best experience writing a song.
Yeah.
And I just try to convey like this upbeat happiness throughout the entire thing. And then of course I had to throw in some weird time elements and stuff just to have it fun. Or like Flannel was a time where I was super calm, my song Flannel. And so I just wrote this little guitar part, and that bloomed into this through composed song that I'm very proud of, where I just kind of try to convey the idea of being warm, like being in a flannel in the house or something in front of a fire.
Yeah.
Like, so the storytelling aspect really comes from what can I use to convey these emotions through music without the use of lyrics.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I've heard this with a number of musicians, but they're like, I love music. I love listening to music, and music is inspirational to me, but I'm not necessarily inspired by other artists for my own stuff.
Yeah, not in the
It comes
slightest.
from so many other different art forms. So I want to hear about what that kind of multifaceted, like bringing all of these different art forms into music.
I think there are artists that like you said, I can find inspirational, and I can take seeds of inspiration from.
Yeah.
Usually artists that do things with jazz or very complex like jazz fusion or classical music or contemporary composition that I find very, very cool to listen to and be like, oh, that's a cool element I could try to use.
Yeah.
But I feel like if I did that, like just purely with music, I'd be trying to like stitch together a bunch of different things that don't really work together.
Yeah.
And I can use the elements, but I can't use the music to convey the thought. So the idea of like inspiration being important is definitely visual media. We've seen movies together many times.
Yeah.
I usually bring over some terrible 80s horror movie, and
I love it.
Yeah. But it's the feeling I get from watching something. Like if I see someone on the beach, I'm like, well, how would I feel on the beach? And like, or in a horror movie.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, there's this tense moment. What makes this moment tense? Oh, it's the music. What's this music conveying? It's like, oh, interesting. I could do something with that. And that inspires me to really try to find ways to portray, again, emotion and like happiness, fear, anxiety, anger through vibrations in the air. It's fun.
Yeah.
But inspiration being important is, like you said, it's kind of paramount. And just, I don't know exactly how to describe how I go about things, but.
Well, we can take a small tangent here just to help the audience understand the depth of your both appreciation and love for movies, for painting, for all of these different mediums. Yes. When Damian and I get together, we're either talking about movies or music. And most of the time, it's movies.
Yes, most of the time it's movies.
What are some of the movies that inspire you the most, or you think stand out to you in terms of what you would say you like and enjoy?
I promised someone I wouldn't mention this one movie, but I'm gonna mention it. I find my enjoyment comes from just weird stuff. And so there's a movie that we watched called Creating Rem Lazar, which is like, I think a children's pilot for something. It's something. It's 48 minutes long, like 15 songs. So it's like a song every 3 minutes or so. And they're all terrible. And then I like some more artful film, like horror has been the most fun thing for me since I was younger. Specifically Halloween, like the movie Halloween. That whole franchise, as terrible as it gets, I will watch every year because I think they're just so much fun. And even stuff like Nightmare on Elm Street is fantastic. There's a great Australian horror film called Lake Mungo that not a lot of people know about, that if you're listening, you should watch that movie.
Yeah. Damian recommended that to me last October, and it's the first movie in a very long time that truly had me on edge for about a week.
Yeah. Or even like recently, I guess we're going to the horror thing, like a brief tangent over here.
Yeah.
I used to listen to creepypastas a lot when I was a kid. You know, it was like the thing you did in the early 2000s. And I've been re-listening to a lot of them recently. But it brought up like the movie Skinamarink, which is like very creepypasta, analog horror inspired.
Yeah.
And so it's like my love of all that kind of translates into art, I guess, a little bit.
Yeah.
And other things I love I love sci-fi. I grew up watching Star Trek, and then Starship Troopers, I think, is a great book, great movie.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess that's the brief tangent there. Is like just love of just little bits of media from different areas, mostly horror, sci-fi,
Sure.
and film. That it's not so much musicals, which is ironic.
Well, I know, again, from talking to you in the past, that John Carpenter has been like the peak of both cinema and music combined in inspiration and being an inspirational figure.
Well, John Carpenter had this theory that he did not want his music to distract from the film.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted it to, like, here's the painting, you know, and then we're going to put a little something in the background just to keep your interest, but it shouldn't be the thing that drives it. That leads to some really boring fight scenes in some movies. And some really great ones. I think, like, in the boring side, you have something like Escape from New York, which, you know, has some pretty dragging long. I know I'm probably slandering that movie for some people, but like it's some pretty long, drawn out fight scenes that really just don't have a lot going on. But combine that with like They Live, and that was it, like a 5-minute fight or something between the two, and the music is just going, and it's like, all right, let's go. So, but it's like John Carpenter, especially, not so much Halloween, but I think The Fog is like my favorite score he's done, just because it encapsulates just the creepiness, and how well it does. And again, it's like portraying that emotion of, like, even without the movie, you listen to that, it's a creepy song.
Oh,
you know?
absolutely.
So it's like, it's creepy, and combined with just the ghost aspect, the haunting. John Carpenter is just a wizard when it comes to combining the two things. He's gone on like a full music career now. Yeah. He does tours and stuff. Maybe I'll see him at some point. He's in his 90s, so I hope I get to see him at some point.
That's fair.
But I remember like listening to Halloween, like I used to have the soundtrack on my iPod Nano back in middle school, and Laurie's theme, which is like 2 notes played badly next to each other, and I was like, that's so creepy. I love it. So yeah, definitely John Carpenter. For what you said, he's like, to me, the pinnacle of like combining music and film together, which, you know, I guess some people wouldn't like. You know, people think like, John Williams, Steven Spielberg, which but I think the fact that it's coming from one man doing both really adds to it.
I think that's a really big aspect to him. And speaking of people in their 90s and John Williams, I went and saw John Williams conduct the Boston Pops like 2 years ago. He did a whole like history of music in the movies, and they had a couple other composers step in, but he came in and he conducted the Harry Potter theme, the Lawrence of Arabia theme, and Star Wars, of course. And then he's like, I'm tired, I'm gonna go sit down. But that was great. Funny story with that. We got tickets 2 days before the concert.
Okay, that's cutting a little
We
close.
drove all the way to Boston and back the same night for this concert.
That's that's a little crazy, man.
Yeah.
What is that, like a 5-hour drive?
Around that.
Yeah.
It was a lot, but it was worth it.
I'm sure it was worth it, 100%, yeah.
They were projecting the scenes for each movie behind them while they were playing too.
Oh,
which was super cool.
That is super cool.
Yeah.
I mean, we could talk about Williams for a second.
Yeah.
I love John Williams. Like, I'm not saying I don't like John Williams.
Sure.
I love John Williams. He's one of my, I guess growing up, I used to have all the scores to his movies, again, on my iPod Nano, because you know, that's what it was. And, oh man, they were amazing. Like, my favorite score of all time was with my favorite movie, which is Jaws. And just the idea of like, we're only going to play the theme when the shark's on screen. Yeah. It does take away from the terror, because you're like, oh, we know it's not a shark. But like, at the same time, I think it's Man Against Beast is the track. I lose my mind every time I listen to that song. The strings in the background, the strings going up with the wave of the ocean. It's like, oh my gosh. He really just sat down and wrote all this. Which a pen and paper on a piano is nuts to me. I mean, I kind of cheat. I use a DAW and I can see the music in front of me, so it's a little bit more, you know, easy that way. But even like Close Encounters, working the score into the movie.
Oh yeah.
Oh man. But yeah, like, and I would say with Williams, like he was very inspired by another composer that I love listening to. I think I've sent you some of his stuff. Holst.
Yeah.
Gustav Holst, specifically Mars is my favorite. Mars and Venus, I think, are amazing. Mars, you can listen to Mars and think it's Star Wars. Like that's how much the inspiration is there. Like I think I played last time. I think it was my birthday. I was with my parents and I played some of Mars on my phone because I'm like, oh, it's my birthday. I'll play whatever I want. And my mom thought it was John Williams.
Wow.
She's like, oh, John Williams. I'm like, this is not. This is Gustav Holst. And like and I think the most popular one is Jupiter.
Yeah.
And Jupiter has that beautiful string section.
Oh
that
my gosh, yeah.
Definitely inspired like Leia's theme from Star Wars a little bit, or like what's that? Far Beyond the Stars from the prequel trilogy. Yeah. So, but yeah, so I think don't get me wrong, I love John Williams, but I think John Carpenter's combination of just film and movie adds a lot more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Regardless of how bad the movie is, because he does not have all winners.
Yeah, that's fair.
I still love him.
Yeah. Well, something that's come up even just today talking a couple times seated throughout is your family.
Yes.
And I know that your family is really important to you.
Yes.
And also a huge source of inspiration.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about your family and kind of what your role within your family looks like right now.
So, I come from a pretty big family. I'm one of 6 kids. I'm the third. I'm the firstborn son, and I have plenty of cousins, aunts, uncles, everything. Actually, my grandmother, I think, was one of 9.
Wow.
So I have plenty of cousins on that side. I have family that I'm getting contacted from, like on Facebook, from like that live in like Italy or someplace, and it's crazy. But so like my family is hugely artistic, hugely musical. I think I mentioned both my parents have musical degrees.
Yeah.
My dad played jazz for most of his life and still does. He was a professional jazz musician, and he is a music educator. He worked for Central Bucks for like 30 years.
Wow.
Or so, just retired. My mom was a music therapist for so many years before she had all of us. And then they tried to raise 6 kids on a single income, which didn't end up happening. So my mom went back to school a few years later, which was amazing for her. She seems so happy with her career. She's a nurse now. My oldest sister, Alessandra, she sang in madrigals in school, and she's done all the coffee house routes, and she likes to sing all the time, and she's great with the clarinet. She can take it out of her case like once a year and just play like she's been playing for 10 years. My older sister, Chelsea, you'll never hear it, but she plays piano very, very well. My little sister, Naomi, played cello and is a great singer. My little brother, Nathaniel, he doesn't really play music, but he has some of the best taste in music I think I've ever heard. Like you point out like an artist like, oh, I like Kenny Loggins, and he'll point you to like a album that's like 30 years old that's like a 9th track on it. He's like, that song's great. And you're like, I've never heard of that one. And then my little sister Tabitha, she plays piano as well, and she also has pretty good taste in music.
Yeah. So there's no shortage of art around the house even.
Oh no, growing up music was playing constantly. My dad also conducted the Central Bucks Community Band for I think 20 some years, 25, 26.
Wow.
And so every summer we would, as kids, we'd go around and help them stuff folders for like every like different instrument. And we learned like, oh, that's cornet that goes with this. And and so like that's first trumpet doesn't go in there, goes with the second trumpet, that kind of thing. It's like, oh, interesting. So we learning how to stuff folders and can't exist in this musical space, even though we couldn't really understand it. But it was just like analytical enough that he could like point out like this word goes with this word, and then you kind of just internalize it after a while. Yeah.
So you mentioned both of your parents, musical degrees, dad, music educator.
Yes.
You, music educator.
Yes.
Now, what does the role in like your stance on music education kind of look like? Because do you do it out of necessity to pay the bills? Do you do it because you really, really have a huge passion for being a music educator? Like, what does music education look like for you?
Just before I was ready to go to college, I took my gap year and I was ready to go. And then I was applying for schools and getting like auditions ready. And then that happened to be March of 2020. And we all know what happened in the end of March of 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nothing happened at the end of March of 2020. So that got put on hold. And I kind of just like lost my mind sitting in my room playing guitar all day, every day for 4 months. I wasn't working. I wasn't doing anything like that. It was just crazy. Couldn't find a job. So that's what I did. Quarantine ended, and I was really happy with the progress I made on the guitar over that time. But I didn't have knowledge enough to. I was teaching at that point already a little bit, but I wasn't really sure where to go from there. And my dad contacted one of his jazz buddies, this guy Dennis de Blasio, and said, I was wondering if you know of a private instructor, because I kind of had at that point had taken going to music school and college out the window at that point. I was already approaching 20, and I just didn't see it as an option. But Dennis de Blasio got back to my dad and said there's a guy in Jersey named Brian Betts. He's a professor of jazz at Rowan University. Here's the contact information. So I reached out, and I drove an hour and a half for every lesson over a period of 2 years.
Wow.
And so at a certain point, it reached like, okay, now this is too much. So we started going virtual just to keep it going. And it was actually October of last year was the last lesson I took from him. And I have books and books of stuff he gave me that he wrote down over that time. And although I didn't get to, go to jazz school or go to like I wanted to, or be educated in that classroom setting, I was able to be taught by someone at a high level who was not hard on me, but he had requirements. Like I had to do transcriptions that were at least a minute long. I had to be able to play the scales he wrote for me the next time I saw him. It was stressful, but through that, I found that my teaching was improving. I found that my playing was improving, and my knowledge of just the fretboard and theory itself was improving. And it really did give me the tools to finish the first EP. And then eventually finish studying with him, and then flannel just happens. And so I'm very, very grateful for that. So although I have a little bit of FOMO from not experiencing jazz school like some of my friends did, I still find that my education was good. It was more than I needed. And I'm extremely grateful to my father, Dennis, and to Brian for helping me get through that and putting me where I am today with the confidence I have.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
For the first 4 years or so, I tried to play guitar. As much as I loved it, it really took away from the enjoyment a lot. Just trying to learn off of like YouTube and trying to learn like, and my dad, he's band musicians and he doesn't know how to play guitar. He plays all the other instruments, but he doesn't play guitar. So it was like him playing with the piano, me trying to like gauge where that is. And I, at one point, like at that point, I didn't know the notes of the neck. I just knew like shapes, and it was extremely difficult. And even with playing with bands, like I would learn songs by watching, people on YouTube and like slowing it down or finding tablature, which 90% of the time the tabs are incorrect to begin with. So you're like, you're doing jumps of like 8 frets at a time, and it's extremely difficult.
Yeah.
And as a young musician, especially young guitarist or bassist, it's disheartening. It really just takes the wind out of your sails really quickly. And I realized when I was in high school that, I was getting better. My parents found me a teacher, was a family friend, this guy, Jamie Thompson, very good guitarist, lives kind of in the, towards Souderton area. And so I would drive up with him, I think once a week or so, and take little lessons. And I did that for a few months. And it really just changed everything. Like I was, I can understand what's happening. And like I would hear people like, I listen to music podcasts and they're like, the Dorian mode. What does that mean? And then going to him, it was like, that's the second degree of the major scale. It fits in here. It works with these chords. These are the intervals. These are the notes. And how does it look on the guitar? And how does it fit in with everything else?
Yeah.
And as a music educator myself, someone who teaches mainly guitar and a little bit of bass, I really try to like put forward like the tools needed to play. Because anyone could say like, here's the ode to joy, play these notes. But then if they do that for like a month, it's like, well, what am I playing? Where does this come from?
Yeah.
It comes from the major scale. What's the major scale?
Yeah.
Oh, it's this scale. Cool. Is that all there is? No. You know, like, oh, there's actually 7 modes of the major scale. What are those? You know, and so it's sort of like me trying to answer the question for people of like, what are those? Because it's something I didn't have. And again, I had a dad who knew all this. He taught music, but he didn't play guitar, so he couldn't really translate it to the instrument.
Yeah.
Which made it very difficult.
Yeah.
But eventually I was able to piece together what it was. I had to relearn how to read music. When I played piano when I was younger, and I had to relearn everything.
Yeah.
And that helped a lot, but I don't really want another kid to go through that, I think.
Yeah. In the past, you've used a term that I thought was really fun. You said, do you want to be a guitar player or do you want to play songs? And I think that encompasses what you just said so well. It's like, well, do you want to actually learn how to play the guitar, or do you want me to give you the, tabs on how to play a certain song? You can play that, have no understanding basis or context to what's going on in it, but sure, you can play it. You can memorize it.
Exactly.
You can do it.
You can memorize it, but it's like there was a musician, I don't forget who it was, but I saw it on Instagram. It's like, I'm not fully convinced I learned how to play guitar. I think I just memorized a lot of songs.
Yeah.
It's like, yep.
Yeah. Oh, man. I, for a time, played many songs. And I had a pretty good music education. I went to Saucon Valley High School.
Okay.
I went through Music Theory 1, 2, and AP Music Theory.
Oh, nice.
With Mr. Miller over there.
Okay.
Great guy. Taught me a lot. And I started with the guitar, learned on that for quite a while. And then I really started falling in love with music theory, and the piano really took over because it was so much easier to understand what was going on in the context of music theory and notes while looking at the piano. And then music theory got really complicated, and I didn't want to continue playing the piano.
Yeah. That's the thing. If you want to play music, at some point you should probably look into playing the piano.
Yeah.
I have gotten around that in some ways. I can play the piano. There's actually a lot of it on the EP that I'm making. But when it comes to my students, it's kind of like hard to explain. Like, oh, the guitar is 6 pianos in different keys stacked on top of each other.
Yeah.
And you have to sort of understand what the top 2 are and memorize everything on them to really understand what the rest of it is.
Absolutely.
And that's not to discourage anyone. That's just like the way it goes.
Yeah.
Because I could teach you how to play a song, but I could give you the tool to learn any song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is much more exciting.
And much more exciting.
And much more useful in the long term.
Or make your own music.
Yeah.
Or just sit there and just improvise and make something. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think improv is something that a lot of places don't really teach as much. And it's extremely important, especially in jazz and everything.
Really, yeah.
Especially in jazz, yeah.
Yeah. That was one of the things when learning guitar that really got me interested in music theory, was that we had gone through an entire unit in my guitar class on jazz. And we, as a class of like 15 or 20, we would we would all be playing melody except for one who would be soloing, and literally like every person in the class would take a turn and solo. And if you didn't know your scales, that was about to be a very embarrassing 30 to 45 seconds.
Oh yeah. There's a great tool I learned a while ago about like making and improvising is it comes from like this. It kind of took it from the South Park thing where the guys were like, you never want to say because, or like, and then you want to say therefore, like this happened, therefore. So when soloing, it's like, I always tell them, like, when you play something, you want to say, I played this, therefore I'll play this.
Yeah.
Or I played this because I played this. Not, I'm going to play this, and then this, and this, and then this. It's going to fall apart shortly afterwards.
Sure.
So, but then you need the tools, which is theory, to do that. Like you can really make great music without theory, but at a certain point, it's trying to fix a car with just a hammer.
Sure.
Like you don't have all the right tools to do it.
Yeah. Well, and it's so easy to make something that could be perfect in terms of music theory, because music theory is so intertwined with what sounds good.
Yes.
So it's like
Yeah.
you may play, the best, quote unquote, best sounding solo you've ever heard, and it could be following in every single line and rule of some jazz scale that you've never heard of.
Exactly.
But it's because it broken down on that scale. That's why it sounds good.
Exactly. Well, it's like when people say like, "Oh, jazz is only wrong notes." I'm like, you realize the chromatic scale is a thing. Like you can use all the notes if you wanted to. But it's what is the quote? It's jazz is not wrong notes. It's just right choices. So it's like you have all the notes at your disposal, just knowing when to choose the right ones. Yeah. Where that goes into modal borrowing and all sorts of other crazy theory that I learned a while back. Yeah.
Nice. I want to talk a little bit about making and packaging music at large.
Oh.
So when it comes to recording and releasing a project, there's more than just the music, right?
Oh, 100%.
You've got an EP, and that EP has an image tied to it that now everyone sees every time they're listening to one of your songs.
Yes.
I want to hear about that.
So I worked with an artist I went to high school with, Will Ostertag, and I haven't really had contact with him much since, but I knew him as an artist, as a painter. He on his Instagram he did like murals, and I'm like, oh, let me reach out to him, see what he wants to do. And we came up with a fair price, and I was like, well, here's the vibe. I think I sent him one or two of the songs, and I was like, look, see what you come up with, and it has to include like a hammerhead shark. That has to be the only thing. And he sent something back the first time, and I immediately was like, no, that is not what I wanted. And we actually ended up workshopping for like, I think a couple weeks.
Wow.
Just like going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And then distributors, they have all these rules. It has to fit into a 3,000 by 3,000 frame. It can't have any sort of, it has to have this on it. And you have to go through, is there lyrics? Cool. Are those lyrics explicit? You have to put that on there. It's so much work. And even after that, like while that's going on, you're still trying to finalize the songs. And that goes into, I have to send the masters over to this guy. And then when they come back, it's like, does this sound good? But then over here, you're looking at the art and you're like, is that really what I want to portray with this? And so attaching like art to it, I think it's just a process.
Yeah.
And again, with my visual media thing, like I want to find art that inspires kind of what the music sounds like.
Yeah.
And that's difficult to portray to someone, especially when they haven't heard all the songs, because maybe all the songs aren't even done yet.
Well, tell me a little bit more about that collaboration process. So, like, from getting that first draft of, this isn't really what I'm looking for, let's take it in this direction. What did that communication look like for you guys?
It looked a lot like just trying to find a common ground, I think. Like, and I really was trying to avoid, like, album art from other people.
Sure.
I was very focused, singular-minded on like, I want something that portrays this emotion, which again, you really can't portray super well over a text or even a phone call.
Sure.
So it was really just going back and forth. I'm like, okay, maybe add a little more blue here. Like, where's the common ground? Okay, the shark is going to be in the sky. There are stars in the sky. Try making it maybe like a zodiac. See if that makes it pop a little bit. Or I think that this blue is a little too. It clashes a little bit too much with the blue on the shark. Can we dull that down a little bit? It's automaton, gears. Like maybe where's common ground? Okay, automaton, gears, robot, or like, figure. Oh, we'll put gears in the sky too to represent the stars. And then we'll just have the stars and the shark to like really portray the zodiac. And it was kind of like that process of like, we'll just make that work. With flannel was very similar. Where my friend Jared Lingle is a good friend of mine, again from high school. I think we're talking about maybe doing the new EP's art with him as well.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And I think that's pretty much finalized. And with him, I didn't have the track done, but then I reached out to him, and this was the only time I took inspiration from other artwork. There's an album by Ludovico Einaudi. I don't know how to pronounce his name. He's an Italian guy. And one of his albums, they had these little stick figure trees. And I was like, I really like those. And those pop up in like different art forms all around the world, like just little stick figure trees. And that really inspired like this warmth aspect, like dead trees, like cold. And so I sent him over. I'm like, do this, but could you not do it like maybe do it in charcoal and add like an oak or something. And Jared is so good that he sent it back, and immediately I'm like, that's what I want. That is immediately. And he sent back like little drafts he was doing, and it was always like the first one he did. I'm like, that is perfect. The only thing that we took a little more time on was the hammerhead, because there's a hammerhead underneath the title Flannel. We even took a little more time on the font of Flannel. Like, okay, it should be a little bit more. Hit it like thick at one point, like written out. I'm like, make it like stick figure-esque, to match with the trees, but also the tree over here is realistic. So like, where does it fit in? So that process of just back and forth. And again, common ground. Well, this art style is cool for this album art, and it's cool for these pieces of media, these paintings, these pictures, or these animations that use this art style, which if you've seen his art is very similar. So it worked really well, which was great. So I was like, okay, cool. So, and then there's like a snow slide that goes halfway through that's kind of like faded in, and he just kind of threw that in there. Like, that seemed right. I'm like, that's perfect. And so that's kind of like the process. Like, you just got to find common ground of like, what am I trying to say, and what can he bring to the table to like really emphasize what I'm saying? Yeah.
So people historically have used EPs for a number of different reasons, whether it's a study of a sound, a collection of songs as not necessarily throwaways, but just extras from an album, chapters in a larger story. What is this second EP shaping up to look like in that regard? Is it a continuation of the first one? Is it really like a new sound, looking at something new, leading toward a larger project? What's its role?
I think I would have to go back a little bit. When I did Automaton, I was very, very focused on making the composition as perfect as possible. Going in constantly, editing tracks, punching in different sounds, adding layers. And I wasn't really skilled with production, so I had my producer Adam do most of the production, the drum programming, all that, just to like, again, do common ground back and forth, find what makes it work. And that came together, I think, beautifully. There's some things on my end that I would definitely change just because of the way I am. Like, I think some stuff in Electric Sheep I could have done better. Nothing to say about anyone else, but I definitely could have done better myself. But playing wise, when I wrote Flannel happened concept to completion of the song itself within a week.
Wow.
Just came together. I would get home from teaching or working, and I would just sit there. And at that point, I didn't have like a studio space like I do now. So I was like in my room with like a little desk, and I just kind of threw it together. And well, I threw it together is kind of a weird word. It just kind of bloomed out of nowhere. Like, it has that opening line, and then I came up with the chords underneath it. And I'm like, okay, weird ambient chords. And then the melody kind of came in a little bit, and I kind of wrestled for like a day. Like, okay, is this going to be like a verse, bridge, chorus song? And what I came up with was, it is a song in sections. There's the first section, like the intro, and then you have the establishment of the melody with the chords. And then you have this ambient section that bring you into this next thing. There's a new solo, new sound, new tone, expanding on that. And then the end, it's a crescendo of just, again, that sort of feeling of like comfort and warmth, but it's loud, and there's piano playing all over it. So with that, I kind of created this soundscape that I loved. And then the next night, I had a candle lit, and I had a really cool crackle to it. So I took out my phone and I took a little recording of it, and then I punched that into another thing, and I just sat and played guitar over it. One take, done. And that was Help from a Candle, which is some people's favorite song by me, apparently, just because they find it's really relaxing.
It's definitely among my favorite.
Oh, good. Thank you. And I really think with this EP, I'm continuing that sound.
So all one takes?
Not all one takes. That's ambitious on a level I'm not prepared for.
All candles.
All candle. Yeah. It's just 1,000 crackling candles layered and pitch shifted with a synthesizer. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. I'll play some hokey like redneck melodies over top of it. Can I say redneck? Is that a mean thing to say? Or?
You know. It's just a thing.
It's just a thing.
We say it.
Yeah. Sorry. Lost my train of thought there. So I want to continue that sound that came from Flannel and Help from a Candle, that warm, sort of more reserved but explored sound.
Yeah.
Exploring a simple melody throughout an entire song, exploring it through key changes, time changes, rapid tempo changes, layering in pianos, synths, strings, anything I can do to just get this all-encompassing, warm feeling
Yeah.
that I really established with flannel
Yeah.
and would like to continue to establish.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot of themes like of the ocean in this one. That there's obviously the hammerhead's kind of become my symbol for like everything I release. But there's a song I wrote about whales on this one. And there's whale song that I use with my guitar to like create little whale noises layered in there, but it has like a pulsing beat. There's a song that I have not fully titled yet, but it's very ambient with a very established melody that gets rougher and rougher. It makes it a little bit harder to like understand what's happening. It's cascading sounds, and then it goes back to that simple melody. And so I just want to convey this idea of like warmth, growth, just peace, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I think it's very evident, and it's interesting because knowing you have a bit of a classical background, it feels very orchestral or like classically orchestrate, like really compositional in that way.
Yes.
Like, and you could take that all the way to the other extreme, and it feels a lot like French house music in the way that it starts with one instrument and continues to build and change and go, seasons, sections, whatever you want to call it. It really does. It works on blending those things in and out, adding new elements, taking elements away, but it always has that melody that's really keeping it all the way through.
Yeah, grounding it like a grounding wire.
Yeah. Something that old farmhouses don't have.
Exactly, yes.
Oh, man. But going all the way back to that idea of the live experience, and I know for a lot of musicians, one benefit that the live experience plays for them is trying new material.
Yes.
It's trying to like workshop what's working with the crowd, what's not working with the crowd.
Yeah.
And in the genre of music and type of music that you like to produce, you've mentioned that's not as much present.
Yes.
So when you're either considering how it plays, listening to it as a whole, who is your sounding board? What is your sounding board for what's working, what's not working?
My sounding board is myself and the people closest to me.
All right.
And I think I ask my girlfriend all the time, does this sound like me? Is this something that I'm portraying? Or I ask my family, like, hey, I made this thing, listen to. I used to not let my family listen to anything I wrote until after the first EP came out. And now I'm like, okay, like, does this sound like me? Is this what I'm portraying? Is this pure? Is this what I am? So if it gets a reaction from them, then I know I'm onto something. I would rather my music sound to me the way I want to sound than to cater to genres or music that I don't necessarily like.
Sure.
And in the same way that there are so many artists I respect that, I think I mentioned him, David Maximičić from Serbia. He's my favorite artist. And it's because everything he writes, even though it may not be commercially, acceptable or successful, is beautiful, perfect, and sounds like something he would write.
Yeah.
And I saw an Australian artist a few months ago called Pliny, and he played in New York, and I went to see him with a bunch of people. And again, it's undeniable. Like, you listen to him, you're like, that sounds like him. And it's not like a vocal quality. It's his, I guess, vibe or aura or whatever you want to call it is very present in the music. Like, you look at him and you listen to the music, you're like, that is the same person.
Yeah.
And I think it's a big part of finding your musical voice. Something that so many people don't do, that's mean, don't have or strive to have.
Yeah.
And it's something that I think I'll be striving to have for the rest of my life. In the same way that there are so many established artists that I love, that say like, I don't know what my voice is. Like, what is it? And it could be evident in their music, but they don't hear it themselves.
Sure.
So in the live scene, like a lot of it is just fun.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I see shows like that, they play like maybe they loop the same track a bunch of times and they just play a bunch of guitar solos constantly, like back and forth and back and forth. And it's really just like guitar mind explosion. Like, oh my gosh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
But when it gets back to the song, it's like, oh, we're saying something. Like there's something we're doing. And I think lyrically, there's ways you can do that. Definitely a little bit more. I wouldn't say more difficult with music because I think lyrics in their own right, again, are
Sure.
extremely difficult. I'm in no way a lyricist. But then there's bands that combine the two of saying like really complicated, time-changey, weird, progressive music combined with great lyrics. Bands like Dream Theater, Haken, Opeth,
Yeah.
Caligula's Horse.
Yeah.
I could go on.
Yeah.
Aviations is a new band that everyone should listen to. I don't care who you are. Luminaria is a great album. Listen to it. It's fantastic. But again, it's the combination of the music is portraying an emotion, and the lyrics are also funneling that emotion to a point where it's like, oh, this is really what it's all encompassing and sounding like.
Yeah.
But live, how would you portray that so well? And I know artists that do, and a lot of the live experience is just fun. It's just for having fun.
Yeah.
And that's why it's called playing music.
Sure.
You don't, I guess you do perform, but you play it because it's fun, like a video game. You don't practice a video game, you play a video game. You practice music, but when you're live, you play it, and it's just it's for fun. You're having fun. You're playing a game basically with yourself.
Yeah.
And that doesn't detract from the music at all. When the music's there, it hits, and it hits hard, and it's fantastic. But there is that playful aspect of it that I just don't know would translate well with my music.
Yeah. What to you is the difference between a concert and a recital?
Oh. Well, this is funny because one of the things I don't do with my students is I do not do recitals.
Oh, interesting.
Yes, I refuse to for a few reasons. Some of it's just like trauma, like being like a little kid and like playing piano and being like, oh, well, I guess I have to learn this whole piece to play in front of my family and all of my peers next week, and so, and then being like 5, I procrastinate and don't learn it. So then you're up there, you're sweating, it's terrible, but you get through it and you're like, I don't deserve any praise for this.
Been there many times.
Yes. And a big part of it is, I think a concert, you're having fun. You're like, if you're the musician, you're there, you're going to play music, you're going to have a great time. A recital is, I'm going here to show my skill and I will be judged.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing is a recital is, I have learned this piece, how well can I play it? A concert is, I've learned this piece, let's have fun with it.
Yeah.
And then when the recital, the audience is not moshing or jumping around and having a great time.
Sure.
They're sitting there with like notepads, or they're just like listening intently, and you're like, oh no, here's jolly old St. Nicholas, like. But a concert, it's like no one's there to judge you. Like some people are, but you're there to just have a good time.
Sure.
I mean, I saw a band called Seder a few years ago with my littlest sister, and the guitarist was like, there was like a weird sound problem. He goes, I can guarantee you there's some 16-year-old in this audience going, that looks easy. And I guess someone went, it is easy. He went, shut up, dumb kid. So it's like, you wouldn't have that in a recital,
Yeah.
And for the rest of the night, when everyone said something, he's like, shut up, dumb kid. That was the whole thing. I'm like, and it's like, you're not going to play like through Jolly Old St. Nicholas and be like, that was weak,
Sure.
Yeah.
No, that's cool.
Yeah.
I agree. I think the purpose of each one is really what alters it. And
Yes.
they're both examples of the live experience, but for totally different reasons.
Yeah.
And a lot of musicians nowadays are also financially motivated.
Yes.
by things like
Yes, very
concerts.
much so.
And on the topic of financial compensation, what is the best way that people can support you in your music practice?
Spotify's out the window, if we're being honest. I have a list of problems to have with Spotify.
Sure.
With some recent decisions, especially.
Yeah.
Like not paying artists under 1,000 streams.
It's wild.
It is wild. It's like I earned that 67 cents. You're gonna give it to me, okay? I think supporting me could be something as simple as, if you know someone who wants to play the guitar, I can teach them how to play the guitar. Teach them how to play music.
Yeah.
I guess is the easiest way. It's really hard to like. Again, you could always stream my music.
Sure.
You could always do that. You could get it on Apple. It's everywhere. But supporting me, how I support myself is through teaching. And I don't know how to advertise, let me teach you guitar, to an audience of probably people who either know how to play the guitar,
Sure.
or are just painters that aren't interested, or like a curator who's like, not really my thing.
Sure.
But streaming does help. Streaming gets my name out there. On my Instagram, I post a video a week of me just playing something.
Yeah.
Just getting me out there is a good way to support, I guess.
Yeah.
People knowing I exist, I think, is enough for me. My art, finances have never been the reason I do art. The reason I do art is because I feel like I need to do it.
This concept of competition, art, like, what is art to you? Like, what is? I know that's kind of a loaded question, but like, what is art? Or maybe if it's a little bit easier, what do you think is the difference between sport and art? And what is that line?
Art is where someone could be technically less talented than an individual, but have more success in the fact that what they create is more impactful. So you could have a guitarist who can play, I don't know, like scales faster than anyone. So technically he's the fastest player around. He's one of the best. But then you have someone like John Mayer who knows how to craft a song and is maybe not as good of a player, or maybe not even as good as maybe of a musician, even though I think he is, will have more success just because his art is saying something more than just notes on a scale would play.
Yeah.
Like you said, like the most amazing solo is crafted from theory, but theory is not music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or like you'll have like looking at the paintings of like Picasso
Yeah.
from the beginning of his career to the end, and how towards the end they're like formless and like crazy, but they're beautiful. And it's like, why is this person who's like painting hyper realistic portraits not as impactful as this guy? Well, this guy's saying more with, I want to say with less. I mean, it does go a little into the idea of technique versus feel.
Yeah.
Like, do you play with technique or do you play with feel? To me, they're the same thing. I don't know anyone who's blazing through a scale and is not feeling it. And I don't know anyone who's playing something soulful and not being technical at the same time.
Sure.
I think there has to be a crossover, and that's where the sweet spot is. So the way that art and sport kind of delineate is, in sport, there's really not a sweet spot. You have to be good. If you're someone who's like, wow, he catches a lot of, or tags a lot of people out at second, but he can't hit, or he's not a really great fielder, but he's really good at this one thing.
Yeah.
He's not going to be picked because he needs someone who's an all-around better player. Whereas in art, like with like an example is like Megadeth, when they pick a guitarist, it's like, who can play these songs? Who's technically well enough to play these songs?
Yeah.
Cool. Can he also voice what he's doing? Does he have his own niche? Does he have his own sound? I mean, Kiko Loureiro, or however you pronounce his name, Kiko, he's a fantastic guitarist, and he's from Brazil, and he has this sort of Brazilian sound to his playing that adds another layer to the music. But it's not the same as like someone who can just play scales really fast.
Yeah.
And I commend bands like Opeth for taking Swedish folk music and combining it with metal, or bands like Aviation, so I mentioned earlier. They combine sort of this dreamlike lullaby-esque sound into metal as well, and they call it cozy metal. So it again, there's that sweet spot you got to find where it's like, where's the sweet spot?
Yeah.
And you don't really have that in sports, I don't think.
Yeah. Well, I would say generally, yeah, but I think there are some instances where it can cross over into that.
Yes.
And I think some of the most memorable cases in history, and something that I think American sports actually do tend to find more success in, or at least popularize, people like Michael Jordan. Yeah. Right. And just the cultural force that informs basketball and these things. It's incredible. Yeah. Right. Like, you see someone who is the most proficient and they can score 75 points a game.
Yeah.
But they're a fashion designer.
Yeah.
They they
exactly.
have a clothing line. They're making a cultural difference.
True.
They have something to say. Like, they're out there. Yeah, they're performing well, but they're,
Yeah.
a photographer captures them at the right moment, immortalized for history.
True. That's very true. I will concede my point. That is a very good.
Well, but I think it's not the sport that's the art,
True.
right? It's an artist playing a sport.
Exactly. If you were to just play a sport, like, I can watch Mike Trout play and be like, he's one of the best baseball players of all time.
Yeah.
But I don't think he has the style of, like, a Bryce Harper.
Yeah.
Bryce Harper, his cleats and shoes are awesome.
Yeah.
They're really good looking stuff, and the Trout stuff just looks like another pair of Nike shoes.
Sure.
Yeah. In my opinion.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. Yeah.
But yeah, I do think it's fascinating.
Yes.
I love this. I could talk about
so we
this
could sit here
topic
all night and just
all day long.
Yeah.
And I think it's so cool with guitar, and especially the genre or niche of guitar that you really like to play in,
Yes.
where it really is about that final product, about that's being presented. It's less about playing live, all of that. It's really like, here's the product that I'm presenting. Here's what I have been working on to show you,
Yes.
to have you listen to. And that final product is that's everything.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. The impact that this genre, I guess you could call it, has had is insane in the world of music.
Yeah.
There was an article I kind of grazed by. I think it was by the producer for Beyonce's new album, and he was talking about how the bands like Animals as Leaders and Pliny. He's like, I had to use some of those influences in this, and it's like, whoa, like, those are very niche artists in the terms of the world. Or even Doja Cat, I think at the 2016 Grammys, Larry Basilio, who's a great guitarist, played part of Pliny's song "Handmade Cities" in the solo, and it's like, oh my gosh, like.
That was in the metal cover of Say So, right?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's like, remember that da 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 da? I'm like, that's Handmade Cities. And
yeah,
I'm like, that is insane. That there's like this crossover. Whether or not they had permission to do that is, not really seen. But still, it's amazing that this niche guy who lives in Australia is making waves over here in modern, like, contemporary music.
Yeah.
And even bands like Animals as Leaders, who are pioneers in, like, the instrumental guitar genre. Absolute monsters of players. They are insane killers, man. They're just great.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
It's like how they have a cultural influence in their own way. And he has his own guitar company, Tosin Abasi. Beautiful guitars.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, so now we have this weird crossover now where this overlooked genre is getting mainstream attention, but there's this thing that happens where mainstream audiences are like, oh, that's cool. And they'll listen to it, and they're confronted by essentially weird timed, odd modal jazz fusion with heavy guitars and occasionally screams. Yeah. And it's like, so there is a barrier for entry a little bit. I think guitarists appreciate metal. I think musicians just appreciate metal and jazz and different genres that kind of don't make it mainstream a little bit more. But by all means, if you want to listen to something, listen to anything you like. Yeah. But yeah, it's just crazy. Yeah. I'm a little rambling a little bit, but like it's
You're good. I want to walk back. I said metal cover, and it's not a cover. It's an amazing metal iteration of that song by the original artist. It's not a cover. I should not have said cover.
No, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's good. Larry Basilio is a great guitarist.
Oh my gosh.
She killed it. I will say that. She killed it. It was great.
That performance is amazing.
She had an album come out a few years ago called, I think it was For Your Love or something. Great album. Not a bad song in the whole thing. So again, but then it's that instrumental sort of fusion genre that it's not super popular, but it's been around for a while, since at least I want to say like probably the 70s. Yeah. With Al Di Meola and Alan Holdsworth, all the way to like Animals as Leaders, Dream Theater, Opeth, more modernly with Intervals and Pliny. Intervals is definitely more the guitar-centric, really technical stuff. Pliny's definitely more orchestral, building bigger things. And then Josh Meader is a guitarist from Australia who just does jazz, and it's some of the most complex stuff I've ever heard in my life.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Who are some of the people at a local level that you have been collaborating with on these projects?
Mostly, I have been working with this wonderful man, this producer, Adam David from Adam David Recording. I met him through a mutual friend, and we like a lot of the same music, which was amazing. And so just talking to him, and he's a guitarist as well. He's a great guitarist. He has a few EPs out under the band name The Laws of Time and Space. People should listen to those. They're fantastic. And so working with him has been fluid, I guess. It's like he gets what I'm saying. We get on calls maybe while we're recording or something, or like producing, like he's mixing something and I'll get a call and I'll put it through my headphones and it's like, oh, okay. And it's almost like he's anticipating what I'm going to say before I say it. Because I'm like, in this section, he's like, you want this a little bit louder? I'm like, yeah, we'll do that. But as a guitarist, he plays a solo on the upcoming EP.
Oh, awesome.
Which is pretty great. And it's a killer solo. So it really started with him and music-wise. And all the artists, like paintings and drawings for the artwork, are local as well. I think I mentioned him before, like Jared Lingle, who I think I'm going to be working with for the foreseeable future because of how perfect he just nailed that.
Wow.
Right off the bat.
That's awesome.
So, but yeah, on the local level, it's really, those are like I try to keep a smaller circle.
Yeah.
But like those are the two guys that I'm like, they're close, they're great, and they're consistent, which is something that's really good.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear it. I think there's something really cool about the way that you think global and live local.
Yes.
And I think it's very admirable. I think it's so important to have that global mentality and inspiration and the things that we take in and our ability to take in and build up the communities around us, because there are so many things around the world that are important and beautiful and like need to be shared.
Yeah. Well, I remember in high school I read Pale Blue Dot by Carl Sagan, and that line of a mote of dust suspended in a sunbeam. It's like, it's not a big place we have, and as much as I love the U.S. and all that, thinking globally has really been a way to ground myself, I guess. It's weird to like ground yourself by thinking about everything, but the fact that I look up at night and I see vast nothingness, it's like there's really nothing else, like like there's nothing else out there besides what we have here. And it's important, I think, especially in this age of, like you said, the internet, to connect with people from all over the world and talk to them and create art, collaborate on art, make something new together. But when it comes to facilitating and nailing down what that art's going to be in the end, you need to be close to people.
Absolutely.
You need to have people you can talk to, meet up with, bounce ideas off of, get coffee with, to just talk through something. Because trying to do that across oceans is a little more difficult.
Yeah, that's fair.
So I think making friends and communicating with people either within the genre or just in art in general from different places around the world is important. But when it comes to creating that stuff, I understand why so many people are like, there's a studio in this city that's close to me that I work with. Yeah. Because it's easier and it makes things smoother. Especially, I lucked out with Adam. We're very on the same level of thinking about things. So I lucked out pretty early on with him. Yeah.
What's your draw to being in the Lehigh Valley right now? Why are you here?
So, one is I grew up in the Lehigh Valley. I grew up in Springtown, right outside of Hellertown. And it was funny, growing up, my dad taught in the Central Bucks School District and directed the Central Bucks Band. And all my friends lived in Central Bucks. And when I was homeschooled, I went to a co-op that was in Souderton. So I was always out that way. Yeah. And I was like, I never really thought about the Lehigh Valley. I'm like, oh, it's just the place where Bethlehem is. I'll go see the lights in the parkway in the winter. That's fun. But then I think it was after quarantine, or during quarantine, circle got small.
Mm.
You know, there was that stuff out there, couldn't get to it. And there was a drive around graduation thing that I was a part of.
Yeah.
Where I met a man named Benjamin Orr. And I actually had on my phone, I think it was the poster for Turbo Kid.
Yeah.
And you were like, that's a great movie.
Yeah.
And then I learned that there's an art scene in the Lehigh Valley.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty big one.
It really is.
It's really big.
And music-wise, we are exploding right now.
It's insane. I communicated with a studio from Easton that sent me some impulse responses that I made a track with. And that's after I put Lehigh Valley in my bio, which I don't know if I ever would have gotten that connection if I didn't do that. So it seems like there's just so much happening here, and from different events that you put on here and different galleries. Like I went on an art walk a few months ago with what is it?
Allentown Art Museum?
No, I have been there though. Allentown Art Museum is amazing. It was at Lehigh campus. They put on like an art thing. So I did that. It was like 3 hours. Amazingly fun. Like it was strange, but it was fun. And it's like, that's what I love about art. It's strange, but fun in so many different ways. And so it's kind of like now the draw here is there's so much opportunity. And especially as an educator, there's people striving to learn how to create here. And it seems like not to like have that market mentality, but it's like there's people here who want to learn. I've picked up students since then. All my students used to be in Bucks County area, but most of my students now are in the Lehigh Valley.
Yeah.
It's like I didn't know there's some people like striving to learn stuff from this area.
Yeah.
Because again, it was just like, although I lived in it, it's not where my base was.
Sure.
Until that changed over after high school. And now I am so happy that this is an area and meeting people like you that I can have opportunities with and talk to and just go see movies with. And
Yeah.
It's quite enjoyable. And the draw here is that there's so much going on. I feel like even if I tried, I couldn't keep up with it, but I'm going to try.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I think we're in an amazing spot with the Lehigh Valley, and I think we're just going to continue going up. And I hope we do. I'm doing everything that I can so that we do.
Appreciate it.
But I think it's awesome that we can be in a place as a local community where we can foster and support artists and support art practices through things like teaching, and really give people the opportunity to express themselves here without needing to move away.
Yes.
And it's not often that we get someone in the music scene who can do that long term here in the Valley, but in the genre that you work in, that's a viable option.
It is.
You know, we have a lot of bands in here, and I love it. I love having them in here. But at the same time, I'm like, I know we all know you can't just be here for the rest of your life. You can always come back here. You can always record here. You can always be creatively based here. But to think that you can do your entire touring career in the Lehigh Valley is very short-sighted.
Yes. I mean, there are a lot of artists who use the Lehigh Valley as a jumping off point.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It's very famous artists musically and in film and everything. So that's obviously something to consider, is like, even if this is the place to start, this is a place to start. Like there's no better place to start, really. This is fantastic.
Yeah.
Like you have all these gallery events here, and like I did that gig last year for you with the video game thing. And like it was a big video game launch. Artists came out. I'm like, this is awesome.
That was a good time.
That was a good time. Yeah.
That was the launch of Ben Burrington's game Righteous Mojo.
That was a fun game too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I had a lot of fun with that one. That was good.
Yeah.
But so it's like, why the Lehigh Valley? It's because, number one, it's close. It's where I am. And I don't think there's anywhere close to me that's better. I could go to New York. Why? You know, I'm just gonna be it's too competitive there for everything. I could go to Philly. I know people who try to do it in Philly. It's the same thing. Here seems to be a place to not only express art but cultivate it, to build off of it, to work with other people, and not feel like you're going to get your head bit off. It feels like this is a place to be free and create.
Yeah. Yeah, and a place to learn.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Well, as we start to wind things down, I want to give you a little bit of space to talk about your guitars. because we have not talked
Oh.
about your guitars yet, and I know how much you love your guitars.
I love them so much. So let's start with the first one I ever got was an Epiphone Les Paul Special 2. Very basic entry level guitar. Came with a little Epiphone amp. Sounded terrible. Played like absolute. Oh my gosh, it was terrible. It's terrible. But it's a good place to start. It had the humbuckers, which at the time I didn't know what that meant. So I'm like, oh, cool. It has two of the pickups that this other guitar has one of, and it's like, cool. So, and I think I still have that first amp downstairs. I think I blew out the speaker in it at one point though. So that was my first guitar. My second guitar was an Ibanez GO, X amount of numbers because they all have like a billion numbers after that. Royal blue, 2 humbuckers, a single coil, first single coil I got, and that was insane. And I played that for a number of years. I learned a bunch of Journey songs on that one. I remember.
Nice.
Yeah. Quilt blue top. Cheap but good. I remember I broke like the nut on the top of the strings one time. It snapped off. I had to get it replaced. I couldn't play the guitar for like a month. I hated it. I was really upset about it. But then when I was 16, I built a walkway for a friend of mine, and he gave me some money, and I blew all of it on a Fender Stratocaster.
Nice.
Which I still have, and I still play probably daily at this point. It's seafoam green, white pickguard, Paul Ferro fretboard, and
It's a
then
beautiful guitar.
maple neck. Yeah, you've seen it. I think you've played it a couple times too.
I have.
It is a beautiful guitar. Skunk stripe on the back.
Oh,
yeah. It was my number one guitar for so many years. Then over quarantine, I got my first 7-string, which is a blue and pink Ibanez, which I don't know the number because it's been painted over, because it was a custom like thing this guy did. It sounds amazing though. It's got John Petrucci pickups in it. John Petrucci, the guitarist for Dream Theater, it's got his pickups in it, so they're aggressive and they're loud. And then most recently, I have my baby. It is a Kiesel custom DC 600 Floyd with lithium pickups, neck through construction, locking tuners, walnut body, maple neck. Oh man, I play this guitar like crazy. I've already worn off some of the lacquer on the back of the neck just from how much I've played it. It's pretty much that one and the 7-string wrote the first EP.
Yeah.
The 7-string only comes in at the end of Scars, that really heavy section that's brought it in for more low end. But yeah, that's my writing tool. That's my machine. It's the guitar I rarely ever play live with. I think I played it live here once.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was it. I've never taken that anywhere else. It's just too special and too nice to me, important to me, and it's been the tool for my creativity. And so yeah, that combined with the rest of them, it's just like, I mean, I do get option paralysis sometimes when I sit down to like write something. I'm like, I have too much stuff to like think about. So I really do limit it to like the Kiesel and like a handful of software plugins, and that's like my go-to.
Makes sense.
Yeah, but yeah, those are my guitars. Those are my babies. I love them. When I was younger, I used to scroll on Instagram, and when I stopped and said, "Oh, that's sexy," and my sister goes, "I know you're not talking about a girl. You're talking about a guitar. Why are you like this?" And I turned around, it was like a PRS, like SE, and I'm like, I don't know, like my Instagram feed is just all guitars at this point.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, the last question that I have for you is, who are Ollie and Bartholomew?
Oh. Okay, yeah. I think you've met one of them.
I have.
Yes. So my little sister and I are very close. Naomi, we used to share a room when we were little, and we're getting matching Gravity Falls tattoos. Like, we're
Amazing.
Yes. The pine tree and the rainbow. She has a rabbit named Ollie, and I have a Russian tortoise named Bartholomew. And tortoise in the hair, Ollie and Bartholomew, it just made sense. And so for the first half of the song, it's very fast paced because rabbit, and there's again that emotional inspiration I'm thinking of. I'm like, okay, bada. I'm like, okay, getting that really fast paced and everything slows down in some sections, but it picks right back up. That pounding melody throughout. It's just like in your ears the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
And in the end, drops to a slow jazz section with like major and minor seventh chords, big bass line, little riding the hi-hat on the drums.
Yeah.
And that's Bartholomew, the tortoise. Nice, easy solo. So yeah, Arlie and Bartholomew are the rabbit and the tortoise. The tortoise and the hare and the tortoise makes this song that's
Amazing.
too long already. It's 6 minutes long, but if you want to take a listen, it's a lot of fun.
It's awesome. I love it. That is another one of my favorite songs,
Oh.
and what prompts me to ask. More so because I know it's an awesome story,
Yeah.
and I think it encompasses so well the love of your family, you
Yeah.
know, this fall mentality, and storytelling. 'Cause,
Yeah.
You know, it harkens back to a story. Feels like it's a soul of its time.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, as we close out, where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram under Damian Appiotti. If you still use Facebook, you can find me on Facebook under Damian Appiotti. LinkedIn, I think it's the same thing, Damian Appiotti. Instagram is the best place to find me because I'm just on there most frequently. I'm on there every night really just to check things. And those are probably the best places to find me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you for having me, Ben.
Yeah, it's been a joy.
It's been a long time coming.
Damian, thank you again so much for coming on the show this week. Over the next 2 months, Damian will be giving free live online soloing masterclasses via Zoom. They'll be free to attend, but the dates are still to be determined. Follow him on social media to stay up to date about this opportunity and when it is officially starting up. In addition, he recently started a Facebook group for people stuck in the intermediate stages of guitar playing. This group is free to join for anyone, and he is posting multiple times a week with advice and exercises to help push past plateaus in the learning process. To stay up to date with all of these opportunities and more, make sure to give Damian a follow on Instagram at Damian_Appiotti. That is spelled at DAMIAN_APPIOTTI, as well as Facebook and your favorite streaming platforms. You can find links to Damian's accounts in the description of this episode. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back with new episodes very soon. To close out today's episode, here is Damian's original song, Flannel.